All right, coming back here, we're talking about Utah being slept on by the national media. They definitely are entering this season. I do think there's just a lot of people last year, too, that look at it and go, well, Utah was 5-7, so how can they all of a sudden contend for the Big 12? Because there are so many teams and preseason rank and a lot of other things that teams have going for them. And that's absolutely true. But in a way, isn't that also ignoring what happened last season when Oklahoma State and Utah were the projected favorites in the Big 12? And then all of a sudden they fell out and ASU was picked to finish worst, rose to the top. So I do feel like there's a lot of people that need to give the Utah Utes more their shine. And I do feel like Utah is a contender in this conference. Absolutely. When you look at the talent that they have assembled, there's a lot of things there. Yes, it could not work. That's college football. But at least as we sit here today, it's hard for me to deny Utah's I just don't think you can deny Utah's status as a Big 12 title contender. FanDuel feels the same way as me, as FanDuel currently has Utah as the favorite to win the Big 12 at plus 550, at least the last time that I checked in on those odds. So FanDuel has Utah as the favorite here. And I think it makes total sense. It goes Utah, Kansas State, Arizona State, Baylor, Texas Tech, then TCU. No BYU, and we already just talked about why, in large part due to that quarterback situation too. So I do feel like Utah is absolutely deserving of this. We could talk about why Utah is better. Some of these other Big 12 teams to me are not as strong as Utah, and they should be ranked higher by my friends at the Locked On Podcast Network, who host the other Big 12 shows. We'll be doing our squad show again coming up on Thursday this week, so make sure you guys keep an eye out for that. But why is Utah worthy of being FanDuel's favorite to win the Big 12? Well, for starters, they are one of the best in the country at one of the most important positions in football, offensive tackle. Spencer Fano, Caleb Lomu, both likely first-round picks as we stand here right now. Also, all five starters back on interior offensive line then. Do I have some questions about? Yeah, but I think the unit's still going to be good. I just question if they'll be the top 5 unit that a lot of people have them already listed as. Also at quarterback, another extremely important position. We just talked about how special and dynamic that Devon Dampier is, even if he has some growing pains. The just dynamic athlete that he is going to allow him to break out of sacks and make so many plays that benefit this team. You got some solid running back options, especially being Wayshawn Parker, 700 yards. It's not a great pass-catching group, but I do believe it's a group of guys that can win enough one-on-one, including a Ryan Davis, who had 700 yards last year at New Mexico playing with Dampier. Then defensively, it's still a Kyle Whittngham, Morgan Scalley, Utah defense. The culture is there. Yes, do I have some questions about the defensive line and who's going to step up? Absolutely, but that's more in the pass rush department. I expect Utah to be really good against the run, especially with what I consider one of the best linebacking groups the Big 12 has to offer. A strong secondary that is 4 players I really like, and honestly, the 5th one, if it's Blake Cotton or whoever that other corner is going to be, I'm fired up about that too. Also think Utah will have one of, if not the best safety tandem in the Big 12 conference too. So, and we already mentioned what a good coach Kyle Whittngham still is, right? So that's where I do feel like the Big 12 is being undervalued by my other colleagues who are at the Locked On Podcast Network. Spencer McLaughlin, who does Locked On College Football, is Utah a little bit higher in his rankings. He has Texas Tech 1, ASU 2, Kansas State 3, Iowa State 4, Baylor 5, Utah 6. I like that a lot more. I feel like Utah at 6 is totally a fair and fine placement. I look at Utah like, let's talk about Utah versus a TCU and a Kansas, for example, right? Well, when you're talking about TCU, yeah, I like what Hoover brings. He's a really talented quarterback, threw for 4,000 yards last year, right? But what else do we know about that TCU team? Well, they have a ton of new skill position players, and yes, the wide receivers should be good, but whenever there are new additions and transfers like that, there are going to be those questions there. How about also their defense? I mean, they got complete unknowns at D-line and linebacker too. They have a couple of solid pieces and players there, but there's a lot new there. And they didn't run the ball great last year either, so that's another concern if you're TCU. How about at Kansas, right? I mean, yes, I like Daniels. He's good, but he's not coming off a great year too. I think they'll have a solid running back transfer coming in, but new position there, an offensive line that has to incorporate some new pieces and get better, and a defense that's trying to overhaul and be much improved as well too. Especially they have no returning starters on their defense outside of D-line. So that's just a lot of pieces to me that a Kansas has to have figured out versus a Utah. At least they have several key contributors, and guys like Vaimahi have been around forever. Fano being a returning starter too, I do think is a big thing for this Utah team when you look at them and what they're trying to do coming up for this season as well too. So yeah, Spencer McLaughlin has them there. And as we said, this is where in the Big 12 co-hosts have these teams ahead, right? Like if your top 5 is anyone from Iowa State, Baylor, Tech, Kansas State, Arizona State, I can't poke holes in that and be like Utah deserves to be better than those teams. But I do think it's pretty easy to figure out a world where Utah absolutely is better than a lot of those teams, right? Like, let's go back down the list if we're looking over these teams and who I think Utah can definitely be better than. Like, if we're starting with ASU, number one, ASU actually has my favorite roster in the Big 12 top to bottom. I think it is the most talented mixed with continuity. I go back and forth on when I say that because I know the talent that Tech has brought in, and Tech on paper, maybe you could say has more talent, but when you look at that talent playing together in a collection and the chemistry and gelling and all of that, that's where I lean ASU over Texas Tech. But for where ASU, good running back transfer they brought in, but Scadaboo was the heart of that team. So that's a big loss trying to replace him, right? And also that pass defense and the pass rush is not great. Once last year we had a great defense and great pass rush. Can you do it again? It's a major question. Just talked about with Tex. I mean, they are bringing in a ton of transfers. So how quickly can it gel? The offensive line had some injuries in spring ball too, so they didn't get to play together and grow all their chemistry either. So that group is also a work in progress in my eyes, right? Then you look at what else did Tech lose? They lost Tajay Brooks, and their next running back who they brought in from USC, the transfer, he didn't even have 500 yards last year, right? Morton also has dealt with some injuries, and we know what can happen with injury-prone quarterbacks. You got a new offensive coordinator in Leftwich, who Utah was originally looking at too, so they're going to try and get on the same page too, right? And yes, this team's got some talented linebackers, tons of talented pass catchers and playmakers, but there's a lot new that has to come together, and sometimes that doesn't always gel. Kansas State doesn't have a ton of new. You get Avery Johnson back, but even he had a QBR outside the top 45 in college football last season, so he's got to get better. You lose DJ Giddens at running back, who is a huge part of their success, and Edwards is good, but it's still a large loss. They have one receiver I like, but more returners there are going to need to step up too, right? And they only have one returning starter in the secondary. I have some questions about their pass rush as well too. I think Kansas State's going to be very good, but they're another team. They have some questions with some weapons and some defensive pieces stepping up and giving them the benefit of the doubt because of the culture they have, but there are questions there. You get to Baylor. You got to love what Baylor did on offense, right? I mean, they won their final 6 games and get 8 starters back on an offense that scored 34 points per game. But Utah also has had their number in the past. I like Sawyer Robertson. I think he's really good, right? But this is a team that their offensive line did struggle against Utah at times last year. And yes, it got better as the year went on, but are they going to be able to hit the ground running this year and keep it rolling? That remains to be seen, right? The defense was also just really bad with Baylor last year. I mean, it's a group that brought in a lot of transfers, and they have to make it work quickly. They also have 11 P4 games, just tied for the most in the country. So that's going to be an incredible task for this Baylor team to have to try and get through that gauntlet of a schedule. Those non-conference games, one of which against SMU, the other Auburn. So not cakewalks versus like what some of the SEC teams might be trying to do. And I should give Auburn some respect because I've said the SEC, but they are at least trying to play. They're playing that Baylor team, which will be a tough game. And the only team we haven't touched on yet is Iowa State. I'm very concerned, if I was a Cyclones fan, about a Super Bowl hangover akin to what we saw from the Atlanta Falcons a couple years ago, right? Where they get to the title game and then it just goes bad. And the next year they fall off. I think Matt Campbell's a good coach. I obviously like Rocco Becht. They got some nice running backs in there, a good solid tight end too, but you lose your 1 and 2 receiver, both of whom were top 5 receivers in the Big 12 just in general last year. Offensive line wasn't great at running the ball too. So is that group going to improve? Also, Iowa State has been dreadful when it comes to rushing the passer the last couple of seasons. Is that going to improve this year too? And they've had a group on defense that's been banged up a lot over the last few years. So can that group finally stay healthy? That'll be a major question. And it's not like Utah's without their questions, right? Devon Dampier has to prove that he can make the G5 to P4 jump. The interior offensive line has to be better in my eyes. The pass catching group has got to show a lot more, and you need to be able to get home with your pass. Speaking of pass catchers doing their job, how about the pass rush? You need to be able to get home with 4, something Utah just was not able to do at a consistent enough level at times, even last year, I'd say. And they did pretty good last year, but there's just questions this year about can they do that because there are so many new pieces. So that's just a massive thing that this Utah team has to figure out. But Utah, with what they have coming back, the championship culture in place, the strength in the trenches, particularly along the offensive line, and some really we know we're going to get in this Utah defense. And there's a lot of reason to believe Devon Dampier is going to be really dang good. I do believe Utah is deserving of being FanDuel's favorite to win the Big 12. And I'm really excited to see if this team is capable of doing it this year. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink minus the alcohol into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or off it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5 and then hourenergy.com. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF, all caps, no spaces, LOCKEDONGOLF, to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today when you head over to 5hourenergy.com.